Hollywood seldom surprises anyone, but in 1984, according to screenwriter Julian Barry, it did just that.
The year that The River was made, there were two other films made about the plight of farmers. There was Country and Places in the Heart. And it was one of the few times, I think, where Hollywood got ahead of the media, because there were no stories about the plight of the family farmer that anybody had read. I never saw any big Newsweek covers about it. Later on, there were.
The truth is, The River was developed from a newspaper article. It just wasn't about farming.
The original writer of this movie was a very good writer named Robert Dillon, who I believe saw an article in a newspaper about a deer that had gotten loose in a steel mill. And I think he went to investigate that event, and that event led him to the fact that a lot of people working in the mills were farmers who had left their families and were working to supplement their incomes while the crops were growing.
However, that deer situation did end up as a scene in the film.
These guys are working in a factory. They're all pretty tough guys. They're hardened, they're cynical, they're bitter. And all of a sudden, this beautiful creature of nature is in this most horrendous of environments with sparks flying around and steel being poured. And their first instinct is to chase it and to catch it and to capture it. And I think there's a wonderful moment when there's a moment of recognition in everybody's eyes that this pitiful creature that's trapped in this mill is really themselves. And rather than do anything to hurt it, they change their minds and they let it go. And that was always in the script when I came onto the picture.
In fact, much was in place when Barry was brought to the project. An interesting story in itself, called from a phone call from his then-wife's friend, Robert Dillon.
One day she got a phone call from Robert Dillon, and she wasn't there, and we were chatting, and he told me that he and the director were not agreeing on how the project should develop, and that he was getting completely frustrated. And being a writer and a member of the fraternity, I said, look, man, if you're not happy, tell this guy to go to hell.
That man was director Mark Rydell, and no sooner said than...
He took my advice and he told Mark he didn't want to make the changes that Mark wanted, and they fired him, and they hired me. And it was bizarre because I thought, this has got to look like a conspiracy on my part, which it wasn't.
Don't tear me down. All I got was growing in these fields.
The only thing in the film that's a little bit phony is there's this wonderful cut glass lamp on the bed table in the bedroom scene. And if you look at that lamp, you realize that if they would just go sell that lamp, they'd be okay for about 6 months. It was a really expensive old antique that they found. And every time I see that lamp, I want to yell, "Sell the lamp! Sell the lamp!"